The rain fell in sheets across the muddy fields of Normandy in June 1944. A squad of German soldiers huddled in their defensive position, scanning the hedgerows for movement. Their Mauser bolt-action rifles lay ready, weapons that had served the Wehrmacht effectively through 5 years of war. The squad leader, a veteran of the Russian front, had briefed his men thoroughly on the Americans they now faced. "Remember, they have a new rifle, but do not fear it. Our intelligence says it is unreliable, a complicated toy that will fail in combat." As dawn broke through the mist, shadows moved in the distance. The Germans readied themselves, hands working the familiar bolt actions of their rifles. The first shot came from the American side, then a second, third, fourth, and fifth in rapid succession, all from what sounded like a single weapon. Before the Germans could cycle their bolts for a second shot, 3 men lay wounded. The distinct metallic ping echoed across the battlefield as an empty clip ejected from an American M1 Garand. It was a sound that would soon haunt German infantry across the European theater. The story of this revolutionary weapon begins decades earlier with a fundamental military problem: infantry firepower. Since the American Civil War, military strategists had recognized that the side able to deliver more rounds downrange typically prevailed in infantry engagements. Bolt-action rifles, while accurate, required a soldier to remove his hand from the trigger, operate the bolt, chamber a new round, then reacquire his target, a process taking precious seconds during which he was vulnerable and unable to fire. John Cantius Garand, a Canadian-born engineer working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts, became obsessed with solving this problem. Beginning in 1919, he dedicated himself to creating a self-loading rifle that would give infantry soldiers unprecedented firepower while remaining reliable under battlefield conditions. Unlike many weapons designers of his era, Garand was not a flamboyant character or self-promoter. Quiet and methodical, he approached firearm design with an engineer's precision and a craftsman's attention to detail. For 14 years, Garand refined his design through countless iterations. Unlike contemporary automatic weapons that were complicated, heavy, and prone to malfunction, Garand pursued ruthless simplicity. His genius lay not in creating complex mechanisms, but in eliminating them. Each component served multiple functions. The gas operating system he developed harnessed the energy from fired rounds to eject spent casings and load new ones, all without external power or complex linkages. When Garand finally presented his completed design in 1933, many weapons experts were skeptical. The rifle appeared too simple to work reliably in combat conditions. European weapons designers, particularly the Germans with their tradition of intricate craftsmanship, dismissed the design as primitive. One German ordnance officer reportedly commented that the gas system would quickly foul and jam in actual combat conditions. Another criticized its 8-round capacity as inadequate compared to the theoretical firepower of light machine guns. Despite international skepticism, the U.S. Army adopted the rifle in 1936, designated the M1 Garand. It became the first semi-automatic rifle to be standard issue for any major military force. As production scaled up, initial domestic criticism focused on its cost, nearly double that of the Springfield 1903 bolt-action rifle it replaced. Military conservatives questioned whether the average soldier needed such firepower or could be trained to use it effectively. World War II began with most major powers still fielding bolt-action rifles. The German infantry carried the Karabiner 98K, an evolution of the Mauser design from 1898. The British relied on the Lee Enfield. The Soviets used the Mosin Nagant. Only the Americans entered the conflict with a semi-automatic rifle as standard issue. This distinction would prove decisive in infantry engagements, though its significance wasn't immediately apparent to Axis forces. The M1 Garand saw its first major combat deployment during the Philippines campaign in late 1941 and early 1942. Despite the overall American defeat, field reports indicated the rifle performed exceptionally well in tropical conditions that typically caused other weapons to fail. Japanese forces, facing the weapon for the first time, reported unusually heavy casualties during infantry engagements, even when they held numerical superiority. German intelligence first encountered detailed reports of the M1 Garand following the American entry into the North African campaign in 1942. Initial assessments were dismissive. German weapons experts, examining captured examples, focused on what they perceived as design weaknesses. The distinctive ping sound when an empty clip ejected, potentially alerting enemies to a critical reload moment, the inability to reload mid-clip, and the fixed 8-round capacity compared to the theoretically unlimited reloading of bolt-action rifles with stripper clips. A classified German ordnance report from December 1942 concluded, "The American semi-automatic rifle represents an interesting but flawed experiment in infantry armament. Its complexity suggests poor reliability under extended combat conditions, particularly in the dust of Africa or the cold of a European winter. Its adoption reflects American industrial thinking, a wasteful attempt to substitute technological complexity for soldier training and discipline. This assessment would prove catastrophically wrong. American forces engaged in sustained combat operations. The true capabilities of the Garand became apparent. A trained rifleman could fire all 8 rounds in under 16 seconds with reasonable accuracy, a rate of fire nearly 3 times that of bolt-action rifles. More significantly, the shooter could maintain visual contact with targets throughout the firing sequence, substantially improving accuracy during rapid engagements. An American platoon of 40 men, all armed with Garands, could deliver the same volume of fire as a German platoon equipped with twice the number of bolt-action rifles. This firepower differential proved decisive in countless small-unit engagements. German after-action reports began noting the surprising volume of fire encountered when facing American infantry. What German intelligence had dismissed as a design flaw, the fixed 8-round capacity, actually ensured American soldiers entered combat with fully loaded weapons. Unlike their German counterparts, who often loaded fewer than the maximum 5 rounds in their Mausers to preserve ammunition, the weapon's impact became starkly apparent during the Italian campaign of 1943-44. In the mountainous terrain, where artillery and armor often couldn't reach, infantry firepower determined outcomes. German units reported being overwhelmed by rifle fire during engagements with numerically comparable American forces. A German company commander's report following a skirmish near Monte Cassino noted, "The Americans maintain an inhumanly rapid rate of rifle fire. Our men, taking cover to operate their bolts, find the enemy still firing without apparent pause." By the time of the Normandy invasion in June 1944, the German High Command had recognized the threat posed by the Garand, but strategic concerns prevented effective countermeasures. Germany's stretched manufacturing capacity couldn't develop and produce a comparable weapon in sufficient numbers. Instead, tactical adaptations were ordered. German infantry were instructed to prioritize targeting. American automatic riflemen, mischaracterization of all Garand-equipped soldiers, and to use suppressing machine gun fire to compensate for their inferior rate of fire. These tactical adjustments proved insufficient. During the hedgerow fighting in Normandy, American infantry consistently prevailed in meeting engagements despite the challenging terrain. German casualties during these small unit actions ran significantly higher than historical norms for defensive operations. The psychological impact became as significant as the tactical advantage. German infantry began to view American patrols as possessing overwhelming firepower, leading to increased instances of surrender when outflanked or isolated. A captured German lieutenant, interrogated after the St. Lo breakout, revealed the psychological impact. "We were told the Americans had a self-loading rifle, but we didn't understand what this meant until we fought them. They fire and fire without stopping. When we hear their clips ejecting, we know they are reloading, but they do this so quickly it hardly matters. My men became convinced they faced machine guns in every engagement." The Garand's greatest test came during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, when German forces launched a massive counteroffensive through the Ardennes forest. In the freezing conditions that caused many weapons to malfunction, the Garand's simple design proved remarkably reliable. While German automatic weapons frequently jammed in the extreme cold, the Garand's gas system continued functioning. Small groups of American soldiers, though surrounded and outnumbered, could maintain defensive perimeters through superior firepower. In one famous incident near Bastogne, a single American squad held off repeated attacks by a German company for 6 hours. The German commander, later captured, reported believing he was attacking a position reinforced with multiple machine guns, only to discover it had been defended by 7 men with Garands. This multiplicative effect, making small units appear much larger through firepower, became a consistent pattern noted in German intelligence assessments. By 1945, German respect for the Garand had transformed into attempts to replicate its capabilities. Captured documents reveal the Wehrmacht had begun developing their own semi-automatic rifle based partly on features observed in the Garand. The proposed Gewehr 43 incorporated a similar gas system, though with significant differences reflecting German manufacturing preferences. However, wartime shortages and bombing of production facilities meant relatively few of these weapons reached frontline units before Germany's surrender. What made the Garand particularly remarkable was its reliability under combat conditions. Unlike many contemporary automatic weapons designed primarily for ideal testing environments, the M1 was engineered from the beginning for battlefield reliability. Its operating system was self-cleaning to a significant degree, ejecting carbon buildup with each firing cycle. The components were designed with generous tolerances, allowing the rifle to function, even when dirty or imperfectly maintained, a critical advantage in extended combat operations, where thorough cleaning wasn't always possible. American field reports consistently praised the rifle's performance across vastly different environments. From the tropical jungles of the Pacific to the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the Garand maintained functionality where more sophisticated weapons failed. This reliability transformed American infantry tactics, allowing for sustained offensive operations with confidence that weapons would continue functioning through extended engagements. The weapon's impact extended beyond direct combat applications. By 1944, German infantry increasingly surrendered when faced with American units rather than risk direct engagement. Prisoner interrogations revealed that many considered American infantry to possess overwhelming firepower advantage, making resistance futile. This perception, while partly influenced by growing German material shortages, specifically referenced the continuous fire they faced from American riflemen. In the Pacific theater, the Garand proved equally decisive against Japanese forces. The established Japanese infantry tactic of short-range decisive combat relied on closing quickly with enemy forces, neutralizing their firepower advantage through proximity. Against bolt-action rifles, this approach had proven effective in engagements with British and Dutch colonial forces. Against the Garand, these tactics proved catastrophic. American infantry could maintain lethal volumes of fire even during close-quarters battle, preventing Japanese forces from closing to their preferred fighting distance. A Marine Corps after-action report following the Battle of Tarawa noted, "The M1's firepower allowed our men to break up Japanese attacks before they could close to grenade range." Unlike our previous experiences with bolt-action Springfields, our men could maintain sufficient volume of fire to stop charging enemy forces without relying heavily on crew-served weapons. The rifle's legacy extended well beyond World War II. Its fundamental operating principles influenced virtually every military rifle that followed. When American forces entered the Korean War 5 years later, they carried the same Garands that had proven so effective against German and Japanese forces. Against massed Chinese infantry attacks, the rifle's firepower again proved decisive in countless small unit actions. A weapons evaluation conducted in 1951 concluded that no alternative infantry rifle could match the Garand's combination of reliability, accuracy, and sustained fire capability in frontline conditions. What makes the Garand story particularly compelling is how its simple, robust design contradicted prevailing military thinking. Prior to its adoption, military rifles had followed a consistent pattern of increasing complexity, with corresponding decreases in reliability under combat conditions. Garand reversed this trend, proving that ruthless simplification, not added complexity, was the path to battlefield effectiveness. The weapon that Nazi Germany initially dismissed as too simple to be effective ultimately contributed significantly to their defeat. By empowering individual riflemen with unprecedented firepower, it multiplied the effective strength of American infantry units. Small American formations could generate the defensive firepower previously requiring much larger units, allowing for more flexible tactics and resilience even when isolated or outnumbered. Beyond its tactical impact, the Garand represented something more profound: American industrial philosophy applied to warfare. Unlike the finely machined, craftsman-built weapons favored by European armies, the Garand was designed from the outset for mass production. Its components could be manufactured to less exacting tolerances while maintaining functionality, allowing for unprecedented production rates. By war's end, over 5 million Garands had been manufactured, a production achievement as remarkable as the weapon's performance. General George S. Patton famously called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. More telling, perhaps, was the assessment of a captured German infantry officer who had faced American forces in both North Africa and Normandy. "We had better tanks. We had better machine guns. But your basic infantry rifle made your average soldier a threat unlike anything we had ever seen. Our men fired one shot at a time. Yours fired as fast as they could pull the trigger." In the end, this made all the difference. The weapon, so simple the Nazis thought it was fake, ultimately changed the nature of infantry combat. Its legacy lives on in every modern military rifle, all of which incorporate the fundamental principle Garand pioneered, empowering the individual soldier with reliable, sustained firepower. This simple innovation, allowing riflemen to fire without removing their eyes from targets or hands from firing positions, transformed warfare more profoundly than many more celebrated technologies. In the end, the M1 Garand story demonstrates an enduring military truth. Sometimes the most revolutionary weapons aren't the most complex or exotic, but those that solve fundamental battlefield problems with elegant simplicity. As American forces pushed deeper into Germany in early 1945, captured documents revealed another dimension of the M1 Garand's impact. German tactical manuals had been revised specifically to address what they called the American rifle firepower problem. Instructions directed squad leaders to prioritize suppression of American riflemen through concentrated machine gun fire before attempting any maneuver. This tactical adaptation represented a complete reversal of traditional German infantry doctrine, which had previously emphasized aggressive small unit maneuvers supported by machine guns rather than being led by them. The psychological impact extended to German equipment development programs. By late 1944, German ordnance officers had prioritized the development of the Sturmgewehr 44, the world's first true assault rifle, partly in response to American infantry firepower. Captured development documents explicitly reference the need to match American rifle fire capability as a design requirement. The STG-44's selective fire capability and intermediate cartridge represented a different solution to the same problem Garand had addressed. Though Germany's deteriorating industrial capacity meant relatively few reached frontline units before the wars. Field reports from the Rhine crossing in March 1945 highlighted another unexpected advantage of the Garand. As American forces established bridgeheads on the eastern bank, they frequently encountered German Volkssturm militia armed with a mixture of obsolete rifles. The disparity in firepower proved decisive in these engagements. A single squad of American infantrymen could generate sufficient fire volume to pin down and eventually capture German units 3 times their size. Prisoner interrogations revealed that many Volkssturm members surrendered specifically because they felt completely outgunned by American riflemen. One particularly telling account came from the Hürtgen Forest campaign of late 1944, where dense woods negated many of the American advantages in artillery and air support. A German battalion commander, captured after his position was overrun, expressed astonishment at American rifle capabilities. "We heard them reloading, that distinctive sound, and my men would attempt to rush forward during what we thought was a vulnerability. But they reloaded so quickly and their flanking units maintained such volume of fire that these momentary opportunities we anticipated never truly materialized. It was as though they had no vulnerable moment." The Garand's impact became even more apparent during urban combat operations in German cities. Traditional military thinking had favored submachine guns for close-quarters battle due to their high volume of fire. However, American after-action reports consistently highlighted the Garand's effectiveness in this environment. Its substantial striking power, which easily penetrated the light cover typically available in urban settings, combined with its rapid semi-automatic fire, gave American infantry significant advantages in building-to-building fighting. German defenders, armed predominantly with bolt-action rifles and limited numbers of submachine guns, found themselves outmatched in terms of both firepower and penetration capability. What made the Garand particularly lethal was its .30-06 cartridge, which delivered substantial energy while remaining controllable in the semi-automatic platform. Unlike submachine guns of the era, which fired pistol cartridges with limited range and penetration, the Garand maintained full rifle ballistic performance. This meant American infantrymen could engage targets effectively from close quarters out to several hundred yards without changing weapons. German infantry, typically equipped with bolt-action rifles for distance engagements and submachine guns for close work, lacked this versatility, often finding themselves with the wrong weapon for rapidly evolving combat situations. Technical analysis after the war revealed another crucial advantage: the Garand's remarkable durability under combat conditions. Examination of rifles returned from frontline service showed that the average M1 could fire over 5,000 rounds before requiring significant parts replacement, far exceeding the service life of contemporary designs. This durability translated directly to battlefield reliability. American infantry could conduct extended operations without the maintenance requirements that plagued more complex automatic weapons. German infantry, increasingly reliant on complex machine guns to counter American firepower as the war progressed, suffered growing reliability problems as maintenance standards declined under the pressures of constant retreat and supply shortages. The Garand's influence extended to Allied forces as well. British observers, noting the firepower advantage American units possessed, began limited deployment of semi-automatic rifles to specialized units. The British Rifle Brigade received small numbers of Garands through Lend-Lease arrangements, employing them effectively in actions throughout Italy and northwest Europe. Their after-action reports particularly noted the weapon's impact on patrol operations, where sudden engagements were common and the ability to deliver rapid, accurate fire often determined outcomes. Soviet observers similarly recognized the Garand's effectiveness. While Soviet doctrine emphasized submachine guns and light machine guns for infantry firepower, captured German documents made available to Soviet allies revealed the significant impact of American semi-automatic rifles. This influenced post-war Soviet weapon development, particularly the SKS carbine, which incorporated semi-automatic operation as standard, a departure from traditional Russian infantry weapons. The later adoption of the AK-47, while embracing full automatic capability, nevertheless reflected the lesson that individual infantry firepower had become essential to modern warfare. Perhaps the most revealing evidence of the Garand's impact came from a special German intelligence assessment prepared for Hitler in February 1945. The document, captured intact during the fall of Berlin, analyzed reasons for accelerating German infantry casualties on the Western Front compared to the Eastern Front, despite the significantly larger Soviet numerical advantage. The assessment concluded, American infantry, regardless of other factors, generates approximately 3 times the effective rifle fire of equivalent German formations. This creates a situational reality where our forces are effectively outnumbered even when nominal strengths are equal. The report specifically identified the M1 rifle as the primary factor in this firepower disparity. The Garand's effectiveness was not limited to the European theater. In the Pacific, where environmental conditions created severe challenges for automatic weapons, the M1's simple design proved remarkably resistant to the corrosive effects of tropical environments. Marine Corps units fighting in Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, and other island campaigns reported exceptional reliability even in the worst conditions. This contrasted sharply with Japanese experiences with their own limited deployment of automatic weapons, which suffered frequent failures in tropical conditions. Japanese battlefield accounts from Iwo Jima and Okinawa revealed growing fear of American rifle firepower. Imperial Japanese Army tactical bulletins warned infantry commanders about the extraordinary firepower of American squad weapons. These documents, captured during the Okinawa campaign, advised Japanese forces to remain concealed until they could close to grenade range, implicitly acknowledging their inability to match American fire volume at normal combat distances. As one Japanese officer wrote in a field diary recovered after the battle, "Their riflemen fire without ceasing. When we think they must reload, they continue firing. Our casualties mount with no opportunity to return adequate fire." The Garand's design incorporated another crucial advantage often overlooked in technical analyses: its ergonomics. The rifle's weight distribution, stock design, and handling characteristics were superior to contemporary military rifles, facilitating more accurate shooting under stress. German weapons, while often featuring excellent mechanical precision, frequently sacrificed ergonomic considerations for manufacturing expediency or adherence to traditional designs. The practical result was that average American soldiers could achieve better practical accuracy with less training than their German counterparts, a factor that became increasingly significant as both sides fielded less thoroughly trained replacements as the war progressed. American training methods evolved specifically to leverage the Garand's capabilities. While German marksmanship training continued to emphasize careful aimed shots with minimal ammunition expenditure, a doctrine developed around bolt-action limitations, American infantry training incorporated rapid-fire drills and engagement of multiple targets. By 1944, standard American infantry qualification courses required trainees to engage multiple targets in quick succession, developing skills directly applicable to combat engagements. This training philosophy, made possible by the Garand's capabilities, produced infantrymen prepared to deliver effective volume fire immediately upon deployment, unlike German replacement troops who required significant frontline experience before developing comparable combat effectiveness. The rifle's impact was particularly evident during Operation Varsity, the crossing of the Rhine in March 1945, where American airborne forces dropped directly into German defensive positions. In the chaotic close-quarters fighting that followed, the Garand's firepower proved decisive. German defenders, armed primarily with bolt-action rifles, found themselves overwhelmed in the initial engagements before they could bring crew-served weapons to bear. American paratroopers, despite landing scattered and disorganized, could establish immediate fire superiority through their individual weapons, a capability that proved crucial in the vulnerable. Minutes after landing, a German Fallschirmjäger, paratrooper, officer captured during this operation provided particularly insightful commentary. We had trained to exploit the vulnerability of airborne troops during landing and assembly. But when your men landed, they immediately generated fire comparable to our machine gun squads using only their rifles. Our entire tactical premise was invalidated in the first minutes of engagement. This account highlights how the Garand had fundamentally changed tactical equations that had been valid just years earlier. The weapon's impact extended to American small unit tactics, enabling innovations that would have been impossible with earlier rifles. The development of the marching fire technique, advancing while delivering suppressive semi-automatic rifle fire, allowed American infantry to cross open ground that would have required extensive preparatory artillery with bolt-action equipped forces. This technique, first systematically employed during breakout operations in Normandy, proved particularly effective against German defensive positions designed around the assumption that advancing infantry would be unable to deliver effective fire while moving. General James Gavin of the 82nd Airborne Division noted in his post-war assessment, "The M1 rifle fundamentally changed our tactical possibilities. Maneuvers that would have been suicidal with Springfield rifles became standard practice. The ability of riflemen to deliver substantial, suppressive fire while maneuvering without relying on crew-served weapons created opportunities that simply didn't exist for armies equipped with bolt-action rifles. This tactical flexibility proved particularly valuable during the rapid advances of 1944-45, where American forces frequently operated beyond effective artillery support ranges. The Garand's advantages became increasingly apparent as combat moved into Germany itself, where urban and forested terrain limited the effectiveness of American advantages in artillery and air support. Small unit engagements, often at ranges under 200 yards, dominated this phase of operations. In this environment, the firepower differential between semi-automatic and bolt-action rifles reached its maximum impact. German defensive positions, designed under the assumption that attacking infantry would be limited to relatively slow rifle fire supplemented by machine guns, proved inadequate against American units where every rifleman could deliver near-automatic levels of fire. A particularly illuminating example occurred during the capture of Cologne in March 1945. As American forces advanced through the city's eastern suburbs, they encountered a German company entrenched in a light industrial area. The German position, well supplied with machine guns and ideally situated for defense, should have required substantial artillery preparation or tank support to reduce Instead, a single American infantry platoon maneuvered to both flanks simultaneously, delivering such volume of rifle fire that German machine gunners could not effectively target either group. Within 20 minutes, without artillery or armor support, the position was overrun, a tactical outcome that would have been virtually impossible with bolt-action rifles. The Garand's influence extended beyond tactical engagements to operational planning. By 1945, American commanders had developed complete confidence in their infantry's ability to establish and maintain fire superiority through rifle fire alone. This confidence enabled more aggressive operational tempos, as units could advance with smaller ammunition reserves for crew-served weapons, knowing their riflemen could compensate if necessary. German commanders, by contrast, became increasingly hesitant to conduct operations without substantial machine gun support, creating significant constraints on their tactical flexibility during the war's final months. What truly distinguished the M1 Garand was not merely its technical specifications, but how thoroughly it had been optimized for actual combat conditions, rather than testing environments. Unlike many contemporary designs that performed well on firing ranges but faltered in the field, the Garand had been developed with battlefield reliability as its primary requirement. Its gas system was self-regulating, automatically adjusting to fouling and carbon buildup. Its recoil characteristics remained manageable even after hundreds of rounds fired in rapid succession. Its sights remained functional in varying light conditions. These seemingly minor features collectively created a weapon that maintained effectiveness under precisely the conditions where other designs failed. A technical analysis conducted by Aberdeen Proving Grounds in 1947, comparing captured German automatic weapons to the Garand, revealed this fundamental difference in design philosophy. The report concluded, German weapons consistently demonstrate superior theoretical performance under controlled conditions, while American designs maintain higher percentages of practical performance under adverse conditions. This disparity appears most pronounced in the M1 rifle, which retains approximately 85% of its optimal performance under worst-case testing, compared to 30–40% for equivalent German designs. This practical reliability translated directly to combat effectiveness, as theoretical advantages meant nothing if weapons malfunctioned during critical engagements. The Garand's influence on post-war military thinking can hardly be overstated. Its success conclusively demonstrated that semi-automatic fire capability for standard infantry was not merely desirable but essential for modern warfare. Every major military power rapidly developed or acquired semi-automatic or selective fire rifles in the years following World War II. The Soviet Union, despite its different design philosophy, embraced individual automatic capability with the adoption of the AK-47. Western European nations similarly transitioned away from bolt-action rifles, many directly acquiring Garand variants through American military assistance programs before developing their own designs. Perhaps the most telling evidence of the Garand's impact was its longevity in American service. Despite rapid technological advances in the post-war period, the M1 remained standard issue through the Korean War and saw significant service in the early stages of Vietnam. Even as the M14, essentially an evolved Garand with select fire capability and detachable magazine, and later the M16 replaced it as the primary infantry weapon, Garands continued serving in secondary roles. National Guard units maintained them into the 1970s, a service life of over 4 decades. Virtually unprecedented for a military rifle in an era of rapid technological change. Korean War combat experience further validated the Garand's effectiveness. Against human wave attacks by Chinese forces in 1950–51, American infantry repeatedly established defensive perimeters that held despite being vastly outnumbered. The ability of individual riflemen to deliver sustained, rapid fire proved crucial in these engagements, where ammunition resupply was often impossible and units frequently operated isolated from supporting arms. Veterans of both World War II and Korea frequently cited their confidence in the Garand as a critical psychological factor that enabled small units to maintain cohesion even when surrounded or outnumbered. A Marine Corps officer, writing after the Chosin Reservoir campaign, provided perhaps the most succinct testimony to the weapon's enduring value. When everything else failed, when artillery couldn't reach us, when air couldn't fly, when heavy weapons froze and vehicles couldn't move through the snow, the M1 kept firing. Men with frozen hands could still operate it. Men low on ammunition could still make each shot count. In conditions that degraded every other weapon system, the Garand maintained enough of its effectiveness to keep us alive. What made the Garand truly revolutionary was how it democratized firepower. Before its adoption, effective rapid fire was the province of specialized weapons handled by specifically trained troops, machine gunners, automatic riflemen, or elite units. The Garand placed this capability in the hands of every rifleman in the American infantry, regardless of specialized training or physical strength. This democratization fundamentally altered the nature of infantry combat, transforming every soldier into a potential source of significant firepower, rather than merely a supporter or protector of crew-served automatic weapons. This transformation had profound implications for infantry tactics. Traditional squad organization had been built around supporting one or two automatic weapons, typically light machine guns or automatic rifles, which provided the bulk of the unit's firepower. The Garand inverted this relationship, making riflemen primary sources of fire, rather than just security for automatic weapons. This allowed for more flexible tactical formations, as squads could divide into effective, independent elements rather than being constrained by the need to maintain crew-served weapon functionality. German veterans particularly noted this tactical flexibility in post-war interviews. A Wehrmacht company commander who fought in both Russia and Normandy observed, "Against the Russians, we could often isolate and eliminate their automatic weapons, reducing their units to ineffective individual riflemen. Against the Americans, every rifleman remained dangerous regardless of what happened to their machine guns or bars. This made their small units remarkably resistant to our standard anti-infantry tactics." This resilience translated directly to American operational effectiveness, as units could sustain combat operations despite significant casualties or equipment losses that would have rendered traditionally organized infantry combat ineffective. The Garand's impact was not limited to its direct combat applications. It fundamentally influenced American industrial methodology, demonstrating that sophisticated military technology could be mass-produced with interchangeable parts to previously unimaginable standards of consistency. At peak production, American factories were producing over 4,000 Garands daily, each capable of passing identical quality control standards and using completely interchangeable components. This production miracle represented an industrial achievement as significant as the weapon's tactical impact, demonstrating American manufacturing capabilities that stunned Axis intelligence analysts. A captured German industrial assessment from 1944 revealed this astonishment. American rifle production appears to achieve quality standards through mass production methods that our craftsmen can only maintain through individual attention. Their ability to produce complex mechanical systems at such scale without quality degradation represents an industrial capability we cannot match. This industrial disparity extended far beyond rifles, but the Garand provided perhaps the clearest example of the fundamental manufacturing advantage that ultimately proved decisive in the war's outcome. Even as technology evolved beyond the Garand's specific design, its fundamental operating principles continued influencing military rifle development for decades. Its gas operating system, with modifications, appeared in nearly every major military rifle design of the subsequent half-century. The M14, FNFAL, H&K G3, and numerous other post-war battle rifles incorporated variations of the operating principles Garand had perfected, even designs that superficially appeared different, such as the AK-47, utilized the same basic gas operation concept, testifying to the fundamental soundness of Garand's approach. Perhaps the weapon's greatest legacy was how it influenced military thinking about the relationship between technology and the individual soldier. Prior to the Garand, military planners typically viewed technology as supplementing individual capabilities, providing weapons that, while more effective than bare hands, still required significant skill and training to employ effectively. The Garand demonstrated that properly designed technology could multiply individual effectiveness, allowing average soldiers to achieve combat results previously possible only for elites. This principle, that well-designed technology should expand capabilities rather than merely augment them, continues influencing military equipment development to this day. U.S. Army study conducted in 1954, examining infantry combat effectiveness across 3 conflicts, World War II, Korea, and limited counterinsurgency operations, concluded, the introduction of the semi-automatic rifle represented the single most significant enhancement to individual soldier effectiveness in modern military history, exceeding even the impact of the original transition from muzzle-loading to breech-loading weapons. It transformed the average infantryman from a participant in massed fire to an individually effective fighting system. This transformation fundamentally altered not just tactics and equipment, but the very concept of what an infantry soldier represented on the battlefield. As American forces pushed into the Japanese home islands in the final stages of the Pacific War, the Garand's capabilities influenced operational planning in unexpected ways. Intelligence assessments of Japanese defensive preparations indicated extensive use of cave systems and hardened bunkers designed to withstand bombardment. Traditional doctrine would have relied heavily on flamethrowers and demolition teams to reduce these positions. However, experience in previous island campaigns had demonstrated that Garand-equipped infantry could suppress these positions through volume fire at firing ports and entrances, allowing safer approach for demolition teams. This tactic, using sustained semi-automatic rifle fire to temporarily blind and suppress positions that would later be reduced by specialized weapons, became standard procedure, significantly reducing casualties among demolition specialists. A Marine Corps study conducted after Okinawa calculated that this technique alone had reduced casualty rates among combat engineers by approximately 40% compared to earlier operations where bolt-action Springfields had still equipped some units. The report specifically noted, the ability of riflemen to deliver sustained suppressive fire without specialized weapons has fundamentally altered our approach to fortified position reduction. What previously required extensive preparatory bombardment or acceptance of heavy casualties can now be accomplished through coordinated rifle fire, followed by targeted demolition. The weapon's psychological impact extended beyond enemy forces to American troops themselves. Combat interviews conducted by Army historians during the European campaign consistently highlighted the confidence the Garand instilled. As one infantry sergeant from the 1st Infantry Division explained, with the M1, I know I can put 8 rounds into any target that appears, almost as fast as I can pull the trigger. That knowledge changes how you approach a fight. You're not worried about making each shot perfect because you know you can follow up instantly. It makes you more aggressive, more willing to take the initiative. This confidence translated directly to tactical aggressiveness, with American infantry routinely initiating engagements, rather than waiting for perfect conditions, a stark contrast to German infantry doctrine that increasingly emphasized defensive reaction as the war progressed. By the final months of the war, the Garand's impact had reached strategic levels. German defensive planning on the Western Front devoted disproportionate resources to countering infantry attacks, specifically citing American rifle firepower as the critical threat. This resource allocation weakened anti-tank defenses, creating opportunities that American armored units exploited during the rapid advances of March-April 1945. In essence, the psychological impact of infantry firepower had shaped German defensive preparations in ways that created vulnerabilities to other arms, a strategic influence far beyond what could reasonably be expected from an individual infantry weapon. Post-war analysis by the U.S. Army's Operations Research Office identified another crucial aspect of the Garand's effectiveness, its impact on fire discipline. Contrary to concerns that semi-automatic capability would encourage ammunition wastage, combat reports consistently showed that Garand-equipped troops actually demonstrated better ammunition efficiency than those with bolt-action rifles. The researchers concluded that this counterintuitive result stemmed from psychological factors. Soldiers confident in their weapons' firepower are less likely to engage in panic fire or waste ammunition on low-probability targets. The knowledge that they can deliver effective fire when needed reduces the compulsion to fire unnecessarily. This psychological security, knowing that firepower was instantly available when required, improved overall fire discipline and tactical decision-making at the individual level. The Garand's legacy extended into unexpected domains, including medical outcomes. Army Medical Corps studies conducted after the war identified a significant reduction in certain combat injuries among American forces compared to similarly equipped Allied units. Specifically, American infantry suffered fewer casualties during offensive operations against prepared positions, a pattern the researchers attributed directly to tactical advantages conferred by the Garand. By enabling suppressive fire during movement, the rifle reduced exposure time during critical phases of attacks, directly translating to lower casualty rates. The study estimated that the M1 had reduced American infantry casualties by approximately 15–20% compared to what would have been expected with bolt-action rifles, representing thousands of lives saved through technology rather than tactical changes. As occupation forces established control over Germany in 1945, they discovered another dimension of the Garand's impact, its influence on German tactical training. Recovered training documents from late-war Wehrmacht programs revealed significant revisions, specifically addressing American infantry tactics. These materials explicitly instructed German squad leaders to assume that each American rifleman represented firepower equivalent to a light machine gun when planning defensive positions. This fundamental reassessment, treating individual enemy riflemen as crew-served weapon equivalents, represented perhaps the most telling acknowledgement of how profoundly the Garand had changed the infantry combat equation. The weapon's legacy continued influencing American military culture long after newer designs replaced it. Even as the M14 and later the M16 became standard issue, the Garand remained the benchmark against which new designs were measured, particularly regarding reliability and striking power. Military armorers and weapons developers frequently invoked Garand-level reliability as the essential standard for any service rifle, acknowledging that its combination of ruggedness, maintainability, and function under adverse conditions represented a gold standard that newer, more complex designs struggled to match. This cultural impact was particularly evident during early M16 deployments in Vietnam, where initial reliability problems created a crisis of confidence among troops. Veterans who had carried Garands in Korea frequently made unfavorable comparisons, establishing a standard of weapon performance expectations that shaped American military procurement for generations. Even modern military rifle requirements continue reflecting the fundamental reliability standard that Garand established, that infantry weapons must function under the worst possible conditions without specialized maintenance or care. The full extent of the Garand's influence became apparent only decades later, as military historians gained access to comprehensive combat records from all major World War II participants. Statistical analysis of infantry engagements revealed a pattern previously unrecognized. American forces consistently prevailed in meeting engagements, where both sides encountered each other simultaneously without prepared positions, at rates significantly higher than could be explained by training, motivation, or supporting arms. The common factor in these engagements was the immediate fire superiority established through semi-automatic rifles, an advantage that proved decisive in the crucial first moments of unexpected combat. A comprehensive study published by the Combat Studies Institute in 1986 concluded, in analyzed engagements where supporting arms were not significant factors, American infantry units achieved successful outcomes approximately 3.5 times more frequently than German units of equivalent strength and position. This success ratio appears directly attributable to firepower differentials during initial contact phases, where American forces typically established immediate fire superiority through individual weapons. This analysis validated what frontline commanders had recognized intuitively. The Garand had fundamentally altered the probability calculations of infantry combat. The weapon's long-term impact became particularly evident during NATO's formation in the post-war years. European military leaders, many having directly experienced American infantry firepower, immediately prioritized semi-automatic rifle adoption for their own forces. The Belgian-designed FN FAL, adopted by most Western European armies during the 1950s, represented a direct response to lessons learned facing the Garand. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, reflecting on equipment standardization during early NATO planning sessions, explicitly referenced American infantry firepower as the standard Allies needed to achieve. The individual rifleman must have firepower equivalent to what the Americans demonstrated with the Garand. Without this capability, infantry tactics remain rooted in the previous war rather than prepared for the next. What made the Garand particularly significant was how it addressed the fundamental limitation of previous infantry weapons. Since the introduction of magazine-fed bolt-action rifles in the 1890s, infantry firepower had been theoretically substantial, but practically limited by operating mechanics. A Mauser or Lee Enfield might hold 5 rounds ready to fire, but the manual operation required between shots imposed critical delays and disrupted aim. The Garand eliminated this constraint entirely, allowing the rifleman to maintain continuous fire without breaking position or losing sight of targets. This seemingly simple improvement, maintaining visual contact with the battlefield while reloading, created tactical possibilities that German forces initially failed to recognize until directly experiencing them. A telling example occurred during the Ardennes offensive in December 1944. Elements of the 6th SS Panzer Army encountered American defensive positions near Elsenborn Ridge. Despite numerical advantage and surprise, the German infantry suffered extraordinary casualties during their initial assault. A German after-action report, later captured, described the experience. Our advance elements reported American positions abandoned or lightly held based on observed activity. Upon assault, we encountered defensive fire of unexpected volume and accuracy. What appeared to be scattered riflemen delivered firepower equivalent to our machine gun sections, making planned maneuver impossible. Casualties during the initial phase exceeded 30%. This fundamental miscalculation, assuming that observed American riflemen represented the same threat level as equivalently positioned German troops, recurred throughout the campaign, consistently resulting in failed attacks and unsustainable casualties. The Garand's mechanical reliability under adverse conditions became particularly evident during the winter fighting of 1944-45 as temperatures dropped below freezing. Many automatic weapons began experiencing significant reliability issues. German machine guns, with their tighter tolerances and precision components, proved particularly vulnerable to cold weather malfunctions. The Garand, by contrast, maintained functionality even in extreme conditions. A U.S. Army Ordnance report from January 1945 noted, M1 rifles continue functioning at temperatures where water-cooled machine guns freeze and vehicle-mounted weapons require continuous heating. Troops report excellent reliability with minimal additional maintenance, even in conditions where condensation and freezing are severe. This cold weather performance proved particularly valuable during the Battle of the Bulge, where American infantry frequently operated without vehicle support or access to maintenance facilities. The weapon's impact on combat psychology worked in both directions. While German troops increasingly feared the volume of American rifle fire, American infantry developed growing confidence in their ability to establish fire superiority in any engagement. This confidence translated directly to tactical aggressiveness. A study conducted by Army historians in 1945 found that American infantry platoons initiated offensive action when encountering German forces approximately 3 times more frequently than comparable British units equipped with bolt-action rifles. This willingness to seize initiative, to immediately establish fire superiority rather than seeking additional support, accelerated operational tempos across the European theater, contributing significantly to the rapid advance across France and Germany. The Garand's design incorporated subtle advantages that became apparent only through extensive combat experience. Its sights, featuring aperture rear and post-front configurations, proved significantly faster to use under combat conditions than the open-notch sights found on most European rifles. Studies conducted after the war demonstrated that average soldiers acquired targets approximately 30% faster with the Garand sight picture compared to Mauser pattern sights. This speed advantage, combined with the semi-automatic function, meant American riflemen could typically deliver effective first shots significantly faster than their opponents, a critical advantage. In the brief exposure engagements typical of infantry combat, even the Garand's much criticized ping sound when ejecting empty clips proved less disadvantageous than initially feared. While German tactical documents suggested exploiting this sound to time counterattacks during reloads, combat reports revealed minimal successful application of this tactic. A post-war analysis explained why. The theoretical vulnerability created by the audible ejection sound was offset by several practical factors. The noise was typically obscured by ongoing combat sounds. Reload times were significantly faster than German doctrine anticipated, and American units typically maintained overlapping fields of fire that protected reloading riflemen. What German planners had identified as a critical weakness proved negligible in actual combat application, another example of the disconnect between theoretical assessment and battlefield reality. The rifle's balance of power and controllability represented another crucial advantage often overlooked in technical analyses. The 30-06 cartridge delivered substantial energy, easily penetrating light cover and maintaining lethality at extended ranges. Yet the Garand's design managed this powerful cartridge with remarkably controllable recoil, allowing rapid follow-up shots with minimal accuracy degradation. German infantry weapons typically forced a choice between controllability and power. Submachine guns offered rapid fire, but limited range and penetration, while rifle-caliber automatic weapons proved difficult to control during rapid fire. The Garand achieved an optimal balance, delivering full-power rifle ballistics with controllability that enabled effective rapid fire. This balance proved particularly valuable during the hedgerow fighting in Normandy, where engagements occurred at varied and unpredictable ranges. A tactical study conducted by 1st Army Headquarters in July 1944 concluded, "The M1 rifle has demonstrated exceptional versatility across engagement distances ranging from 25 to 400 yards. Units report effective first-round hits at extended ranges and sufficient controllability for multiple rapid hits at close quarters. This versatility has proven particularly valuable in terrain where engagement distances change rapidly and unpredictably. This adaptability across different combat environments represented a significant advantage over specialized weapons optimized for specific distance ranges. The Garand's influence extended to American squad tactics in ways that fundamentally differentiated them from German equivalents. Traditional German infantry doctrine centered on the machine gun, with riflemen primarily supporting and protecting these crew-served weapons. American squad organization, by contrast, evolved to leverage the firepower of individual riflemen, with automatic weapons supplementing rather than centering the unit's combat power. This organizational philosophy, distributing firepower throughout the unit rather than concentrating it in specialized positions, proved more resilient to casualties and more adaptable to rapidly changing tactical situations. Particularly illuminating comparison occurred during the Hurtgen forest fighting in November 1944. The dense woods and limited visibility neutralized many American advantages in supporting arms and mobility. Yet even in this environment, which theoretically favored German defensive tactics, American infantry consistently advanced against determined resistance. A German defensive assessment captured after the operation noted, "American infantry advances despite heavy casualties and without substantial artillery support. Their rifle sections maintain offensive pressure, even when isolated from crew-served weapons. This represents a fundamental tactical problem, as our defensive positions are designed to suppress or eliminate automatic weapons, but cannot adequately address distributed rifle firepower. This distributed lethality, the ability of each individual soldier to deliver significant firepower, represented the Garand's most profound tactical impact. The weapon's influence on training methodology transformed how American forces prepared for combat. Traditional rifle training had emphasized careful aimed fire, with success measured primarily through score ring accuracy at known distances. As the Garand's capabilities became apparent, training evolved to emphasize rapid target acquisition and engagement of multiple targets, skills directly applicable to combat conditions. By 1944, standard rifle qualification courses incorporated moving targets, rapid fire stages, and targets appearing at unpredictable intervals and locations. This training approach, made possible by the Garand's capabilities, produced riflemen prepared for actual combat conditions rather than abstract marksmanship principles. A training assessment conducted in 1945 highlighted this transformation. Current rifle training produces infantry capable of delivering effective fire immediately upon deployment. Unlike previous methodologies that required substantial combat experience to develop practical effectiveness, current graduates demonstrate combat-applicable skills during their first engagements. This immediate effectiveness appears directly attributable to training methods developed specifically around semi-automatic capabilities. This accelerated combat effectiveness, the ability to deploy replacement troops who could immediately contribute to unit Firepower proved particularly valuable during the high-casualty operations of 1944-45. The Garand's mechanical simplicity yielded another crucial advantage: maintainability under field conditions. Unlike more complex designs that required specialized tools or extensive training to service, the M1 could be completely disassembled and reassembled using only its own components. A comprehensive maintenance study conducted in 1945 found that average infantry soldiers could perform all necessary maintenance procedures after minimal training, with over 90% successfully completing detail stripping and reassembly without assistance. This field maintainability ensured that weapons remained operational even when formal maintenance facilities were unavailable, a critical advantage during rapid advances where logistics struggled to keep pace with combat elements. The rifle's influence extended beyond tactical applications to fundamental combat psychology. Traditional military training had emphasized fire discipline and ammunition conservation, principles developed around the limitations of previous weapons. The Garand's capabilities required psychological adjustment, training soldiers to maximize its firepower potential rather than instinctively conserving ammunition. A fascinating psychological study conducted in 1944 revealed that many replacement troops initially used their Garands essentially as bolt-action rifles, firing single shots with significant pauses between, despite the weapon's semi-automatic capability. Only after experiencing combat did they fully utilize the rifle's rate of fire potential, a psychological transition from conservation-oriented to firepower-oriented combat mentality. This psychological adjustment applied at command levels as well. Early wartime operations frequently underutilized infantry firepower, with officers calling for artillery or air support in situations where rifle fire alone could have achieved objectives. As experience with the Garand's capabilities spread, tactical doctrine evolved to recognize rifle sections as primary firepower elements rather than merely security for crew-served weapons. By 1945, American infantry doctrine explicitly prioritized establishing fire superiority through rifle fire before employing supporting arms, a fundamental reversal of traditional approach that recognized the revolutionary capability the Garand had created. The weapon's influence on German tactical adaptations became increasingly desperate as the war progressed. By late 1944, German infantry units had begun prioritizing ambush tactics that capitalized on the Garand's one widely recognized limitation: its fixed 8-round capacity and en-bloc clip loading system. A tactical directive issued to German infantry in November 1944 explicitly instructed, when engaging American infantry, initial fire should be withheld until targets are fully exposed. Maximum casualties can be inflicted during their reloading sequence, which occurs predictably after 8 shots. Coordinated fire should target exposed personnel during these moments. This adaptation, essentially conceding initial fire superiority to focus on exploiting reload vulnerabilities, represented a profound departure from traditional German offensive doctrine. The effectiveness of these adaptations proved limited in practice. American infantry quickly developed countermeasures, including staggered reloading, where some squad members maintained fire while others reloaded, and deliberate manipulation of the 8-round cycle to create unpredictable reload timing. A tactical bulletin issued by First Army in December 1944 specifically addressed these German adaptations. Intelligence indicates enemy forces are attempting to time counterattacks to our reload cycles. Units should implement staggered reload procedures and maintain cross-coverage within squads to eliminate this vulnerability. This tactical evolution, the development and counter-development of techniques specifically around the Garand's operational characteristics, demonstrated how thoroughly the weapon had transformed infantry combat methodology. The rifle's impact became particularly evident during urban combat operations in the final months of the war. Cities like Aachen, Cologne, and eventually Berlin presented complex tactical environments where supporting arms proved difficult to employ effectively. In these conditions, infantry firepower became the primary determinant of operational success. American after-action reports consistently highlighted the Garand's effectiveness in this environment, particularly noting its ability to penetrate typical urban cover while maintaining sufficient controllability for accurate fire in confined spaces. A tactical assessment prepared by 7 Corps after the capture of Cologne specifically noted, Urban operations demonstrate the M1 rifle's decisive advantage in building-to-building fighting. Its penetration capability against typical interior walls, combined with its rate of fire, allows effective room-clearing operations with minimal specialized equipment. German defenders, relying on bolt-action rifles supplemented by limited submachine guns, consistently prove inadequate against our rifle sections in close-quarters battle. This urban warfare effectiveness, an environment where many weapon systems showed significant limitations, further demonstrated the Garand's exceptional versatility across combat environments. The full scope of the Garand's psychological impact on German forces became evident only through post-war interrogations of captured officers. A particularly revealing account came from a Waffen-SS company commander captured during the Colmar pocket operations in January 1945. We had been warned about American artillery and air support, which could be avoided through proper concealment and dispersal. No one adequately prepared us for their rifle fire, which could not be avoided and seemed to come from everywhere simultaneously. My men became convinced they faced significantly larger forces, leading to panic and premature withdrawal from defensible positions. This psychological impact, creating the perception of overwhelming force through distributed firepower, repeatedly undermined German defensive operations, causing units to abandon positions that could have been maintained against conventionally armed infantry. The Garand's effectiveness particularly impressed German observers who had combat experience on both Eastern and Western fronts. A Wehrmacht infantry officer who had served in both theaters provided a particularly insightful comparison during post-war debriefing. Russian infantry relied on mass and submachine guns for close assault, which could be broken through prepared defensive fire if properly positioned. American infantry presented an entirely different problem. Their rifle fire alone could suppress our positions before their automatic weapons or supporting arms came into play. This fundamentally altered our defensive calculations, as positions that could withstand Russian assaults proved immediately untenable against American infantry. This comparative assessment, from forces who had faced multiple Allied armies, provides perhaps the most objective validation of the Garand's transformative impact. The weapon's influence extended to post-war military planning in unexpected ways. As nuclear warfare dominated strategic thinking in the 1950s, infantry equipment priorities shifted toward lighter, more portable systems that could maintain effectiveness in dispersed operations necessitated by nuclear battlefield realities. Yet even as overall infantry doctrine transformed, the fundamental requirement for individual semi-automatic capability remained constant, a direct legacy of the Garand's demonstrated effectiveness. The requirement for individual soldiers to maintain substantial independent firepower in dispersed operations represented the enduring tactical lesson of the M1's combat record. A particularly telling assessment came in a classified NATO planning document from 1954. Despite fundamental changes in strategic environment and operational concepts, the requirement for infantry individual firepower established during World War II remains constant or increases under nuclear battlefield dispersion scenarios. The proven effectiveness of semi-automatic individual weapons in maintaining combat capability among dispersed units remains the foundation of infantry equipment requirements. This enduring principle, that individual soldiers must possess significant independent firepower capability, remains perhaps the Garand's most significant legacy to modern military thought. The full manufacturing achievement the Garand represented became apparent only through post-war industrial analysis. At peak production, American factories produced Garands at rates exceeding all major Axis rifle production combined, while maintaining quality standards that resulted in remarkably low field failure rates. A comprehensive industrial assessment conducted in 1946 concluded, the M1 rifle program represents perhaps the most successful application of mass production techniques to precision mechanical systems in manufacturing history. The achievement of producing over 5 million units with interchangeable parts and consistent performance characteristics revolutionized conceptions of what modern industrial systems can accomplish. This manufacturing miracle, producing precision weapons at previously unimaginable scale and consistency, represented an industrial achievement as significant as the weapon's tactical impact. German industrial intelligence proved particularly interested in how American manufacturers achieved this production miracle. Captured German assessment documents revealed growing alarm as the war progressed. American production capacity for infantry weapons appears unlimited by normal manufacturing constraints. They have solved precision manufacturing challenges through methods fundamentally different from our approach, achieving consistency through process control rather than craftsman skill. This represents an industrial capability we cannot match, regardless of resource allocation. This industrial disparity, the ability to produce not just more weapons but more consistent weapons through different manufacturing philosophy, ultimately proved as decisive as any tactical advantage. The Garand's most profound legacy extends beyond its specific combat applications to how it transformed the fundamental relationship between technology and the individual soldier. Prior to its adoption, military planners typically viewed technology as enhancing individual capabilities incrementally. The Garand demonstrated that properly designed technology could multiply individual effectiveness exponentially, allowing average soldiers to achieve results previously possible only for specialized troops. This principle that technology should transform capabilities rather than merely enhance them continues influencing military equipment development across domains, representing perhaps the most enduring conceptual legacy of Garand's revolutionary design. A military philosopher, writing in the Army War College Journal in 1962, perhaps best captured this transformative impact. The M1 rifle represented not merely a technical improvement, but a conceptual revolution in how we understand the individual soldier's relationship with technology. It demonstrated that properly designed equipment can transform ordinary troops into extraordinary fighting systems, a principle that now drives development across domains, from infantry equipment to aviation to naval systems. This conceptual shift from technology as enhancement to technology as transformation represents the Garand's true revolution in military affairs. As American forces prepared for the anticipated invasion of Japan in 1945, planning documents revealed the complete confidence commanders had developed in rifle squad capabilities. Operational plans for Operation Downfall explicitly relied on infantry firepower to overcome expected fanatical resistance, with supporting arms allocated primarily to hardened targets rather than personnel suppression. This planning approach, trusting rifle squads to establish and maintain combat superiority against determined resistance, represented the ultimate institutional validation of the Garand's battlefield effectiveness after 4 years of worldwide combat experience. Perhaps the most telling evidence of the Garand's impact comes from its influence on enemy weapon development. The Japanese experimental Model 4 rifle, under development when the war ended, represented a direct attempt to counter American infantry firepower through indigenous semi-automatic capability. Similarly, the German Gewehr 43 and St. G 44 both incorporated elements specifically designed to match American rifle capabilities, though neither reached sufficient production levels to influence battlefield outcomes. These development programs, initiated by opponents specifically to counter the M1's effectiveness, provide perhaps the clearest acknowledgement of how fundamentally the Garand had altered infantry combat realities. The weapon's most profound legacy may be how it transformed American military equipment philosophy. Prior to the Garand, American weapons development had frequently imitated European approaches, assuming European military traditions reflected superior knowledge and experience. The M1's success demonstrated that American design principles, emphasizing rugged reliability, manufacturing efficiency, and practical functionality over theoretical elegance, could produce superior combat results. This philosophical shift, prioritizing battlefield effectiveness over technical sophistication, continues influencing American military equipment development across domains, representing an institutional lesson that transcended the specific weapon system. A military historian, writing in 1975 as the M16 replaced the last Garand derivatives in American service, offered perhaps the most fitting epitaph. The M1 Garand transformed not just how America fights wars, but how we think about fighting them. It demonstrated that American design principles, practical, robust, manufacturable, could produce weapons superior to any in the world. More importantly, it showed that arming ordinary citizens with extraordinary capability represents the true American way of war. In that sense, the Garand remains our most characteristically American weapon, one that transformed ordinary farmers, factory workers, and clerks into the most formidable infantry the world had ever seen. The weapon so simple the Nazis thought it was fake, ultimately changed not just tactical outcomes but the very conception of what infantry combat could be. Its legacy lives on in every modern military rifle, all of which incorporate the fundamental principle Garand pioneered, empowering the individual soldier with overwhelming firepower. This simple innovation, allowing riflemen to maintain continuous fire while focusing on targets rather than weapon operation, transformed warfare more profoundly than many more celebrated technologies, demonstrating that sometimes the most revolutionary weapons aren't the most complex or exotic, but those that solve fundamental battlefield problems with elegant simplicity. A former German officer, interviewed for a military history journal in 1960, perhaps best summarized the Garand's impact from the perspective of those who faced it. "We had superior tanks, we had superior machine guns, we had better training and experience, but after 15 minutes of combat, none of that mattered. Their riflemen fired and fired and fired without stopping. No matter how well we positioned ourselves, their fire kept coming. It wasn't that they were better soldiers, their rifle made them so." In the final analysis, the story of the M1 Garand transcends mere military technology to reveal a profound truth about warfare itself. What began as an engineering challenge, creating a reliable self-loading rifle, ultimately transformed the fundamental dynamics of infantry combat. The weapon that Nazi Germany initially dismissed as too simplistic to function effectively became the standard against which all military rifles would be measured for generations. Its legacy extends far beyond the battlefields where it first proved its worth. The Garand represented a philosophical shift in how military technology should serve the individual soldier, not through complexity, but through elegant simplicity that multiplied effectiveness. It democratized firepower, transforming every rifleman into a decisive combat element rather than merely a supporting component of larger weapon systems. Perhaps most significantly, the M1 Garand embodied the distinctive American approach to warfare, practical, robust, and accessible to the citizen soldier. It enabled ordinary Americans, farmers, teachers, factory workers, and clerks, to face and defeat professional soldiers of the Wehrmacht, demonstrating that properly equipped citizen armies could outfight even the most disciplined professional forces. The weapon, so simple the Nazis thought it was fake, ultimately proved that true innovation often lies not in exotic complexity, but in solving fundamental problems through practical engineering. As General George S. Patton observed, "It truly was the greatest battle implement ever devised, not because of technical sophistication, but because it perfectly matched human capability with battlefield requirement." Long after the last Garand was retired from active service, its influence continues shaping military thinking worldwide. Every modern combat rifle, regardless of nation of origin, incorporates the fundamental principle John Garand pioneered, empowering the individual soldier with reliable, sustained firepower. This legacy, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary through intelligent design, represents the true revolution the M1 Garand brought to modern warfare. The weapon that Nazi Germany couldn't believe would work effectively ultimately helped ensure their defeat, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most revolutionary of all. The end.